Hello viewers, it's glad to know you're watching your program. It is Economic Insight and I'm your host, Paul Kingsley. Now, in continuation with the ongoing report we are doing on housing deficits in Nigeria, it is no longer news that in Nigeria today we are having over 17 million housing deficits. Now, with us on the program is a man who is contributing in no small way to the development of the housing sector. I'm talking of Habib Mustafa Ango. He is the Group Managing Director, CEO of Abyssal Group. He's going to be giving us their own contribution, the challenges affecting owning a home in Nigeria today. It promises to be an interesting conversation. I'll be back after this time out. Thank you.
Since inception, Abyssal Group has distinguished itself to become one of the leading group of companies providing services in different sectors of the economy. The company was incorporated with the Corporate Affairs Commission of Nigeria on the 19th day of September 2007. Malam Habib Mustafa Ango is the Group Managing Director, CEO.
Abyssal Group is a group of companies comprising different companies. The company is made up of Abyssal Investment that deals in construction and real estate. We also have Abyssal Rice that is into agriculture. There is Abyssal Transportation. And also we are into rendering some services. The establishment of Abyssal Group has been founded on the principles of providing job opportunities to teeming youths and at the same time arming ourselves with something to do.
Abyssal Group is highly equipped with a dynamic management and technical team with years of corporate and field experience that is well positioned financially and technically to undertake and execute any given task in its field of endeavors.
That is delivering a housing estate in Karsana and the estate of Garimfa here in Abuja. It was quite a huge project, about 35 hectares of land. It was a bit challenging, but by the grace of God, we were able to handle and deliver it on time. Yes. While actually the challenges are quite huge, they are enormous, and it depends on who you are asking. But they are more to do with sometimes government bureaucracy. And then, of course, funding is the major challenge developers are facing. Well, actually, there are many factors involved, and I would mention but few. One, as I've mentioned earlier, is the issue to do with bureaucracy. The Max Housing Program is well designed, but then, as I always mention, we always have challenges when it comes to implementation. So before you are being allocated a lot of land, it has some certain issues. And then another aspect that was not covered by the mass housing scheme is the funding. So even at the end of the day, by the time that you are able to deliver a low income housing scheme, but then an average worker or an average salary earner, how does he assess the funds to obtain or buy that house? That's the challenge. That's very challenging because it's not been backed off by any financial institution that will provide mortgage opportunity to all these low-income earners. So that's the most challenging aspect of it, actually. Actually, I don't need to say it. Everybody knows what is actually happening. The banks are not supporting mortgage. They don't. Why? Because most of the salaries, the remuneration, they are very low. So a situation whereby an average Nigerian receive about 50,000 per month as a salary. So then how much will the bank charge? So it will take them about 40, 50 years for them to cover. So these are some issues. But then I think what the government should do is to mandate to the central bank that these banks should allocate some certain percentage of their earnings to mortgage. So by doing that, I think it will at least mitigate to a large extent the challenges that is being faced today. I believe we have done a lot on our own fact, apart from delivering on the housing project, where we sacrifice a lot for the low-income Nigerian to own a house. Why? Because we gave a very long and flexible payment period. Okay. Yeah, usually it's supposed to last for 1 year, but there are instances that we gave up to 5 years. Yeah, because we are trying to encourage average Nigerians to own a home. Yes, so we really contributed a lot on that regard. No, I don't, honestly. Nigerians are very skillful. It's only the system sometimes that is what is at fault. Actually, most of Nigerians are very skillful, and I think you believe with me in that regard. Well, that has to do with lacking the right attitude. And this involves many factors. One of them is lack of sustainable policies, which is as a result of continuous change of government or chief executives. More so, you find that somebody started a project, then by the time that he's no longer there, then the person that succeed him would like to bring another project instead of continuing on that existing one. So of course, if that is not been checked or is not going to be checked, then we continue to be having abundant projects. So it's more like bureaucracy. Yeah, actually, I think somewhere in the early days of this present administration, there's been a move by the administration to kind of revisit the Procurement Act, whereby you understand the processes involved will be trimmed down to some certain, so that it will accommodate a lot of indigenous companies, and then it will be more realistic. Currently, the kind of procurement process we have is very discouraging. We have procurement usually lasts up to 6 months, which affects the capital implementation of projects. Well, actually, the programs are good, the policies are good, but the most challenging is the implementation. Because over the years, when you look at the agricultural sector, there is being run by some certain cartel. So even if the government is doing the right thing when it comes to the implementation, maybe they don't, you find them supplying fake farm inputs, fertilizers, seeds. So what the government should focus attention on, I think, there is the area of checkmating this cattle to make sure that they are delivering the right inputs. So when that is done, I think the program, I think they are okay, the policies are okay. The essence of government sometimes is just to provide policies, and then at the same time, as I have said earlier, I believe the government is really trying on that. The only challenge is, quite all right, because of the number of the farmers is quite huge. So all this effort cannot reach everybody at once. That's why when you look at it, there are a lot of private sector involvement in the farm. A lot of big conglomerates like Dangote, they are all into it. this anchor borrower scheme by the by CBN is really contributing. But then, we are still in the early stage of this program. So sometimes it takes time before we start seeing the actual result. So I just will call on people to exercise a little bit patience. So, but I think putting the right program on the ground, I think at the end of the day, Nigeria will reach food sufficiency. But just that we just have to give or exercise a little bit patience. My advice to young Nigerians is to be enterprising. When I say enterprising, you don't have to have a large amount of cash before you start doing something. Part of some of the projects we do handle. There was a project we handled at one of the Nigerian universities. So when we are handling that project, then I noticed some of the students were idle doing nothing. We encourage them. Okay, we need on-skill level. Why don't you come, partake in what we are doing, get some money, then at the end of the day, you have something to save for yourself. Just start doing something. By starting doing something, no matter how small, then with time, inshallah, you'll make it. So just to be enterprising, start doing something, no matter how small it is, something that feeds you an income. That's what is needed to be done, actually, honestly. My name is Sabibu Mustafa Ango. I was born about 4 decades ago. I lost my father when I was about 2 weeks old. I was raised by a wonderful mom, married. I have 4 lovely kids with a caring wife, and then I'm an entrepreneur. So that's where I am.
Interesting. Yes. Well, it's a fine place to leave it. We must say a very big thank you, sir, for your time, your contribution on the program. Out of your busy schedule, you still make out time to be with us. We really appreciate your time on the program. Thank you so much.
Yeah, welcome, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. So, hold on, sir.
Yes, you're welcome.
Housing, they say, is a basic necessity of every man. All over the world, progressive and people-oriented governments make housing a major consideration of their development policies on the well-being of the people. Considering the importance globally attached to housing provision, it is unfortunate that Nigeria's housing profile since independence leaves much to be desired. Successive governments over the years have failed woefully to attend to this basic need of the citizenry, in spite of several promises made by government officials. But then, why do most developers shy away from low-cost housing schemes is yet to be ascertained.
Housing deficit in Nigeria is a challenging issue. And we as a company, we don't shy away from mass housing. We are into mass housing, as I mentioned earlier, and most developers that shy away from mass housing do that because they go into construction to make money. And most times they have a target market. And if they go into mass housing, those that can afford their buildings will not want to afford something less than their standard of living. That is why you see most housing estates today are occupied by the high-income earners. And those high-income earners, they have a very high taste. They wouldn't want to stay maybe like in a block of flats, someone that maybe was staying in a mansion before, he wants to get a house in an estate, you would not want him to go into a block of flats or into a semi-detached or whatever. The major reason, another major reason why people shy away from mass housing is land availability as well, and government policy at the end of the day. So, but we in Toscan Technologies, we go into mass housing because, as I mentioned in my first respond, the company was driven by the housing deficits. Like, we want to provide housing for the low-income earners in Nigeria, and the only way we can achieve that is the mass housing scheme.
Low-cost housing scheme, by definition and by policy, is expected to make houses affordable. But coming to look at the realities around getting the land capital and also getting the financial capital to address the low-cost housing issue, it's a big failure on the part of government. Because if government can give out land allocations, particularly, let me use the FCT as a point of reference. If houses are to be constructed on those lands given by government to supposed developers, but the greatest surprise is that those that get this land are not developers. Some get this land and sell to developers, and what you buy is what you will sell. If you buy land cheap, whatever you do on it, the price of the land will also tell on it. If you buy land expensive, what you put on it, your sale price will also be expensive. So if government is not giving land out directly to those who will use it for the purpose of low-cost housing, then it can't work.
You're right. It's very true. I'm hoping that I'm not going to fall into that same attitude. But in Nigeria, I was talking about this recently with somebody. We tend to not want to be innovative. There are very few entrepreneurs in Nigeria, as far as I'm concerned. That we have this contract attitude, where it's about put money in, how much money do I take out? So the quickest returns back to money, and the quickest and easiest way of getting your returns back from development. And the problem is that I've seen, because everybody is seeing one way of it working and people making money in one way, which is doing the typical 3-bedroom house in VI Ikoyi or 3-bedroom flat that you pay X amount of money and you make X amount of money back. Everyone tends to still follow that same attitude and think that that is the way to do it. So we have very few entrepreneurs and risk takers who are willing to assess, and that's where I have an issue with the market, any market, is that people don't assess the market first before they develop. They decide their product first and they now try to push that product into the market. And that's what we see. So where there's this attitude to be risk averse and find and do what other people have done and have been successful from. But in development, as you know, there's a time before a development starts and finishes. It takes 3 years. So because someone makes money from it this year, it doesn't mean that you can't do the project this year. If you see developers are making money from, let's say, 3 bedrooms in Ikoyi this year, which are not anymore, then people think that because they did, I'm going to do the same thing. But they forget that their own product is not going to come out after 3 years. And by 3 years, the market has turned. So right now, I suspect that this thing that we're talking about, because there's been a lot of noise about low-cost mass housing. So I suspect that we're going to soon see a trend where when some of the major people start doing it, the smaller people will also follow due. But the issue is, as I said, people don't want to go. But it's in a mass housing, a small amount of money over a big project. And obviously that also comes to a small amount of money from every unit you sell. So people don't want to make 1 million naira, 500,000 naira per unit. They want to rather just do 5 units and make 10, 20 million naira than to do 50 units or 100 units or 1,000 units and be making 500, 200,000. Because obviously it's a small work. And so that, but I suspect and I hope that that you will see more, especially when my generation comes in, to this business. You'll see more innovators, people that think before they develop.
Well, I think if people carry out with that impression, they are not correct, because actually building a house is service to humanity already, whether you get paid for it. It's a basic, just like food. A farmer that is producing food, anybody producing shelter, is basic. So anybody that is doing that is providing service to humanity. So already that itself, it has covered a lot of things. Why people shy away from mass housing? First and foremost, from our conversation earlier, I talked about the interest rate, talk about the value for land. It's expensive. You understand? Most of these people who are the end users, the masses per se, actually don't have access to loan. You understand? And for the few that have access to loan, actually it takes a whole lot of time for them to be granted that loan. So the developer actually come in to sink his money. When you say mass housing, we're talking of 5,000, 10,000 units. I'll come and take money from bank, sink my money there, and begin to wait interest rate. At the end of the day, you end up working for the bankers. They'll come and take over your property after you have finished developing. So a lot of people tend to shy away from it, not because they are not passionate. They are passionate, but if certain factors that is mitigating against that can be taken care of, government should provide land to the developers directly. Once you confirm that this developer is genuine, he has this, he has that, give him land. There should be a synergy, and moreover, there should be a direct loan, which is going to be very soft, so that for whatever I want to do, before it gets to the end user, the price hike or the end price will not. We are not even talking of profit maximization here. We're talking of breaking even. Just let us just deliver it to have a name. Okay, I did this job. You have employed people. You know, it's gratifying too, in its own. So if government can do that for us, it's okay.
This is a very political statement you're trying to let me get into. So I would just try and look at it from the policy perspective and methodology perspective. In terms of mass housing that people, or should I say affordable housing, the enabling environment is just not there. I think this current administration has done a lot in trying to create that enabling environment through mortgage refinancing company, restructuring of Federal Mortgage Bank, and many other things. But those are just the technical, theoretical aspect of things. But when you go down to the actual work, what's the cost of getting land? What's the cost of building approvals? What's the cost of building materials and all those kind of things? You realize that there's still a lot of gap to fill. Then we now go to the methodology of building. Let's say we want to mimic what the developed world has done. You don't achieve mass housing by arranging block. But then again, I would say that because I'm in prefab. Somebody that does block work would tell me, oh, block work is cheap. But if block is cheap and I needed to deliver 7 million houses like you just said, how many qualified engineers, plumbers, electricians, masons and co do we have really in the country? And even if we did have enough of those, how many houses can one developer build arranging block? I would stand to be corrected, but I don't think there are many developers that can do 200 houses in a year. While our parent company, for example, we had a project in Iraq for rebuilding parts of Iraq after the war, and they built 1,700 homes in 7 months. This is 1,700 in 7 months. Now, in the Nigerian market, if I'm able to build 1,000 houses a year standard, you'll be one of the biggest developers. So the issue of why people shy away is not per se whether they shy away. Even for those that go into mass housing, after the first project, they are tired. They're tired because cost of cement varies, cost of sand varies, cost of stone varies. The electrician is going to bring you a varied bill after the first 6 months. So all those things are part of the stresses of going into construction. But for us, we mechanize the process of construction. If I have a machine, I know it can cut 100 houses for me. Then I focus on training labor to assemble. So I don't know if that answers your question, but what it does is, from our perspective, we feel that there are many methodologies that need to be used to deliver the 7 million homes. And currently in Nigeria, block work arrangement is the only popular methodology. I would say that is 95% of what people are doing. So if government is really serious about it, we need to start building factories that are producing houses as opposed to factories that are producing blocks.